Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to Dr. Sleep. This is a donation reward movie reaction. Thank you to the donator, Venom0027, for donating for another one. And this time, like I said, Dr. Sleep, we have the sequel of The Shining. So everyone knows The Shining, even if they've never actually seen the movie. Everyone knows of it. Everyone probably even knows a couple references to it, such as Here's Johnny. The Shining is a legendary horror film that is very psychological in nature, but also does have some paranormal to it as well. Jack, oh my god, my mind is blanking on his name. Nicholson. Jack Nicholson was phenomenal in that film. In fact, a lot of people consider it his defining role. And it's hard to argue. Like, I've only seen the movie, I think, twice, I want to say. Once or twice. And the first time I saw it was, like, I was already out of high school and stuff. It was, like, within the past decade. I don't remember the exact year it was, but I saw it at my grandmother's house. And it's like, it's really good for a number of reasons. And Jack Nicholson's acting is phenomenal in it. But there's also some darkness behind the film that you can't really reconcile with. Such as, there's been reports and stuff I've heard, and I guess it's practically confirmed that the lead actress who played Jack Torrance's wife, I don't remember her name, the actress or the character. But apparently the actress was actually put through some pretty torturous things during filming, and it's really not okay. And I don't know all the details. I don't know all the truth behind all of this, so I can't, like, fully pass a judgment here at this moment, but I've heard some pretty bad things. Luckily, I haven't heard anything negative really about this film, in terms of the filming and the actors and all of that. So, if I remember correctly, The Shining focused on this family of three who goes up to a mountain retreat. The father is a writer, I believe. And while in this mountain, he ends up going very insane and becoming homicidal and everything. And this film is actually, like I said, a sequel to The Shining, starring Ewan McGregor, who easily one of my favorite actors, for his just unquestionable talent, but also because he's just really attractive. Admittedly, I like to watch him on screen, but he is really good. Like, I've been a fan of his for as long as I can think of, honestly. I think the first thing I actively knew I was watching him in was Star Wars, when he was Obi-Wan Kenobi in Episode 1, and then continuing forward throughout the trilogy there, the sequel trilogy. And then I've seen him in stuff like Moulin Rouge. He was in the Christopher Robin movie. And so many other great films. He's just fantastic, honestly. So I have nothing but belief that he's going to be phenomenal in this as well. I don't know who else is in this film, but Ewan McGregor is playing an adult Danny Torrance. the son, the young son of Jack Torrance from the first movie, from The Shining. And I know two things about this film. Only two. Supernatural stuff is involved again. And there are references to Ruby in it. And I have no idea how that second one is going to come into play. But the fact that there are references to the Rooster Teeth series Ruby in this is kind of amazing to me. Even with all the issues I had after the end of last season, I'm still a fan of Ruby. And it's like, how the hell are they going to integrate that into this? It's probably just going to be background stuff, just like stuff in the background. I might have heard before how it's integrated into this film and just forgot, but for the life of me, if I did hear what it was, I don't remember now. But yeah, I don't know who else is in this. I don't know the actual details about the plot at all, or I don't even know if it's like as much of horror as The Shining was, or if it takes a little bit of a different route. But when it came out, I did hear people liked it, but I didn't hear a lot of like talk about this film. Like it's not one of those films that was just everywhere, and it's not one of those films that got all this kind of attention and reviews and discussion. It just kind of, I wouldn't say it flew under the radar, but it didn't quite impress me. Or, not impress me, impress audiences, it seems, as much as it could have. It didn't seem to just make as big of an impact as you almost would expect from a sequel to The Shining. Now, that could speak to its quality, or at least its universally accepted quality. But it could also mean very little. So we'll just have to kind of make our own judgments as we watch. But yeah, I did enjoy The Shining, so I'm very much expecting and hoping to enjoy this one too. But since it was made so much later than The Shining, and since it's, I think, made by even completely different people, I'm not expecting it to be like exactly like The Shining. I'm expecting it to kind of forge its own identity as well, while still being very obvious that it's a sequel. I'm expecting kind of like a mix, a blend there. But we'll see how that turns out. And I'm just hoping it's good. It's just under 3 hours long. And I'm very much hoping that this time is well spent. And that I'm happy to have seen it in the end. But then again, that kind of goes for any movie or anything I react to. So I will say ahead of time, since this is a longer movie, the lighting is very much going to change during the reaction. Especially with it getting darker earlier in the day now. It might start to fade down and get darker. I already have the lights in here turned on just in case. But yeah, hopefully the lighting doesn't get too bad during the reaction or the afterthoughts. We'll see, and we'll kind of just hope. But I'm excited to get to this, so let's not waste any more time and get on to the movie. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirecting, excuse me, and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the movie. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, I just looked a couple things up. First off, this movie was based off of a book, just like The Shining was. A Stephen King book just as well. either wasn't aware or had forgotten that there was a Doctor Sleep book as well. That it actually wasn't just a made as a movie sequel. Um, but I also want to look up the stuff about the Ruby references, and not just references, but integration into this. So this was actually something the writers and all really wanted to include, and luckily the actress they had cast as Abra was a massive fan of Ruby already. So integrating this in was actually extremely easy and just completely just a no-brainer for them. There is even one sequence in the film where it shows Abra when she's messing with the Hat Lady. Why can I not think of her name? Rose. When she's messing with Rose, there's one sequence where she's wearing a bob wig, and it's like it's directly in reference to Emerald. And I already mentioned how I did notice how the one part where she does the visual illusion trick where she makes the cult members think they're seeing one thing, but in reality it's just like a stuffed toy. Also, like, that is Emerald's semblance from Ruby. That is what she can do, the illusion. So I really like how this was so well integrated, where it didn't feel like just a reference. It felt like it was an intentional part of the story. The character the character of Abra is a fan of the series, as we see from the poster and the figure and all. And so she, utilizing her own shining, her psychic powers, was able to basically copy Emerald. What Emerald has done to be able to, in a way, connect to her favorite character. And yeah, like, anytime you see a character in media who is like you in any way, you do tend to connect with them more. So it makes sense that the character of Abra would like Emerald the most, with their power sets having those similarities. It's just like how I connect to certain characters in cartoons and anime and whatnot who have gone through similar things to me, or are also LGBT or whatnot. It's just because of those connections and similarities, I just connect to them easier than I would with just some random other character. So I like how that integration was done. But let's talk about the movie as a whole. So as a sequel to The Shining, which is considered one of the greatest horror films of all time by so many people, this was definitely different from what I was expecting going into it. And not necessarily in a bad way. I very much enjoyed this. And it was very clearly, like, not hiding its connection at all. Like, there are some sequels I've seen for movies that are, like, trying to be their own thing to such a degree that they almost don't feel like a sequel, except there's, like, certain little, like, references thrown in there. This one, very much the entire time, feels like, oh yeah, this is a continuation of The Shining. And it feels natural. It feels really well done. Yeah, there are some very on-the-nose moments where it's just like, oh yeah, here's literal scenes from The Shining, and everything. And constant references to the events of The Shining. But all in all, it did feel very natural in the way it was handled. And part of that is due to the actors, who are all fantastic. Ewan McGregor, he's always been great. Like, he's always been a phenomenal actor. I talked about that in the pre-thoughts. And he's good at both drama and comedic roles. He can do whatever he needs to do at the time. Because this was a very serious role. But then you see other stuff he's been in, Moulin Rouge as an example, and he's very comedic and silly in that. And then there's some movies and roles where he can kind of blend the two. such as Christopher Robin. Or even to a degree, Star Wars. You could say his role as Obi-Wan in the prequel trilogy could be considered a blending of serious and comical. Because without question, there are some scenes in those movies that are extremely funny. And people still meme them. But I think a lot of the strength of this movie does come from its script. It is actually really well written, really well paced, and it just makes you honestly care about everything going on. The villains were well done, having the villains of this being this psychotic, superpowered cult is not at all what I would have seen coming. It caught me really off guard, honestly. But it makes you believe that this kind of thing would happen and that these kind of people are like fitting for the film. And it makes you despise them really easily. Like, it really makes you hate the fuck out of them without any question. And really pulls it off in, again, a very natural way. Because I feel like any kind of villain you have in a film who very openly and unapologetically kills kids, you're gonna just automatically despise. Like, killing kids is like just that kind of thing that you just cannot reconcile. And actually showing them doing this in this film, even if they don't like show like every little detail of like the blade piercing him over and over, it's like showing them do that to that kid was like really sickening to watch. And again, the actors all did a fantastic job at their roles in that regard. They really made themselves hateable. And I like how the big climax at the end also ended at the hotel. I think that was a very smart move, not only to connect it to the original movie, The Shining, or book, I guess, as well. But I think it just worked for Danny's character arc, because that was a big part of this movie. Danny's arc from going to a drunken loser traumatized by the events of his childhood to being a hero who gave his life to save this girl and stop the evils of this hotel. And I think it was a very well done character arc through this. I think that they really handled it well, even with the time skips in there, and really made it believable that he went from one to the other. Like, because again, you saw in the movie, he wasn't even on board with Abra at first. He was actually going to just kind of like ignore it, just kind of like pretend it wasn't happening. It actually took a little bit for him to actually do something about it. And I liked that. I liked that they didn't just have him just go with it right away. It would have felt a little too easy that way and wouldn't have really worked as much for his character. So I really liked that. And then there was the fact that this movie, while it wasn't like super gruesome or like bloody or gory or anything, the deaths had impact, like very heavy impact. Especially the deaths of Abra's father and Billy. Abra's father happens basically off screen, although we know when it happens, how it happens, all that jazz. And it's horrible and it's sad, because while we don't get to spend as much time with him as other characters, we get a feel for who he is and how much he cares for Abra and everything. He's trying to be a protective, loving father, and I think he really was succeeding at it. And it kind of was one of those come out of nowhere shocking deaths that you really just didn't really expect. And when it happened, it hurt you because knowing how much it would hurt Abra and how much it did hurt Abra. And then Billy's death was also very sudden, though that one I admit I'm not as surprised by. Like, his character could easily have been set up for that. I'm not really surprised by it, but it's still really sad because Billy was made excessively likable, and it's like you really mourned with Danny when he died. It's like it was so horrible, and especially the way he died. For that, for Snakebite, whatever her name is, I can't think of it. But for her to have done her powers right as she was dying, the power of suggestion and everything, to have him kill himself, it's just like, oh my god, it's like you just have to go out being a bitch one last time. And it's like, and the thing is, I kind of was all for what she had been doing at the beginning. Robbing and marking child predators like that. Like, yeah, girl. Hell yeah. Fuck those child predators. Not literally, but you know what I mean. God, okay, I'm not going to dig myself into that hole any further. But seriously. I liked what she was doing, but then she got pulled into the cult and, well, she became a cultist, as one does. And that's kind of where it's like my sympathy for her kind of started to take a nosedive. Because once she started going in with all of this and killing kids and trying to kill Abra and everything, it's like, yeah, no sympathy anymore. And that kind of goes for all of the cultists. So when they started just being killed in that shootout, it's like, it was really powerful and impactful because I did not see it going that well at first. But seeing all of them just be taken out felt really satisfying because knowing what they had done. And I think that's why that was put in there. If it's in the book, I don't know how many changes were made from the book, but if it's in the book, I can see why Stephen King would have wrote that in there too. Because you make these characters to be so unlikably evil and disgusting and horrible. So having our good guys kill them actually is satisfying and like a cheering moment. You get excited about it. Normally, a lot of movies try to stray away from that, about you getting excited over your main good character killing people. But in a situation like this, it's like, yeah, it's kind of a good thing. And again, it's a movie. It's a movie. Keep in mind, it doesn't apply to real life situations. It's fiction. But again, I like the pacing of this. I like how it didn't just like get to everything right away, how it built everything up even with the villains. You even saw multiple confrontations between Abra and Rose. I keep forgetting her name for some reason. You see multiple confrontations between Abra and Rose, and it builds that up well so that the final confrontation in the hotel is that much more dark and sinister. And speaking of that, some people I could probably see saying that the final confrontation was a little anticlimactic because it ended really quickly, because all Danny really had to do was get her in the right position, having her think she's winning, and then unlock all the boxes to release the overlooked ghosts. And honestly, I don't think it was anticlimactic at all. I think it was actually the perfect way to take her out. Again, it's something that had been beautifully built up throughout the entire film. The fact that he was locking away these ghosts in the boxes was a continuous thing throughout the entire movie, pretty much. So it's like having this be the way he finishes off the main antagonist is a smart move. It's good writing, honestly. And in the end, I just really enjoyed it. It was a fun watch because it got me emotional. It got me angry. It got me to cringe. It got me very, very upset at some points. And as hard as it was to sit through certain things in it, I like that it did that, and it did it effectively. It gave us a good story with great actors who performed each of the roles well. It had amazing musical beats, like, and just sound effects in general, like that the heartbeat part there, like, oh my god, I could not physically express how uncomfortable and anxious that was making me. Like, I would. I don't know what it is about heartbeat sound effects in movies like this, but it's like it instantly ramps up the anxiety, like more than anything else for me. Um, it's not the scariest or most disturbing thing for horror films or anything. Like eye torture and stuff like that still bothers me more. But it's like that just gets my anxiety pumping really, really heavily, and it's really hard to sit through listening to that. Like I was on the, if it continued at all, like if it didn't stop when it did, I probably would have I would have had to take off my headphones. It was getting that bad for me. Which again, as I said in the reaction, I know that was the point. I understand that was the point, but it still affected me that hard, that much. Um, and like I said, the sound and music design throughout all of it was great, but especially during that Overlook Hotel climax, like that jump scare that got me at the one point, and just everything about it was fantastic. There were some great visuals in this too. A lot of the I guess you could call them shining sequences when Abra and all was using her shining to like go into Rose's mind. Like those sequences were great. There was some really great imagery with that, some really creative, unique, fun ideas. They really went all out, I feel. Um, I really appreciate what they did with this on pretty much all levels. It's not necessarily the best movie I've ever seen or anything like that. Um, I wouldn't call it perfect, but it's by every account that I can think of really damn good. It's really well made, and I really liked it from just an entertainment perspective. So yeah, I'm really glad I finally got to see this. I'm glad someone chose it as a donation reward. Um, Thank you, Venom0027, for the donation for this. Um, this is something I have wanted to see for a while. I just never got around to it, and I'm glad I finally did. It was worth the wait. It was a great movie, and I really like these characters. And again, the actress who plays Abra really needs to do more stuff. Again, if she wants to. Not everyone needs to. I mean, the actor who played Danny Torrance in the original Shining movie didn't act again after that. Apparently, he had a cameo in this, from what I read, though. When I was looking things up afterwards, apparently he had a cameo during the baseball scene. Um, I probably won't recognize him if I go back and look, but yeah, apparently he was in that. So that's a little fun fact for you. It's like the only acting thing he's done since the original Shining. I think it said like he's been a teacher or something like that since then. Um, and they didn't get like Jack Nicholson back at all for this, even for a cameo, because he's retired from acting and everything. So they wanted to respect that and respect his retirement. Because apparently he was asked to be in Ready Player One as well and rejected that. Another movie I haven't seen actually. But he was, I don't know why he would have been asked to be in that. Actually, now that I think about it, but apparently he was. But he because of his retirement, I guess he said no. So yeah, uh, the makers of this movie wanted to respect his retirement and respect that at all, and so they didn't even ask him. But yeah, I very much enjoyed this one. This was a really good one. I was super invested in these characters, in the story. And yeah, I thought it was a great sequel to an already great movie. But tell me in the comments below, what did you think of Dr. Sleep? And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.